So I think, are we on yet? I'm trying to get on here and not. I'm not getting the live button. Are we on there yet? Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think we got it there. Yes. Yes. I'm on. I'm live. Good night. Is it? I'm looking for the live button. Looking for the live signal. I think yes. I think it's on. Yes. Uh-huh. Good evening. Good evening. Good night. Good morning. Good afternoon from whichever part of the world you're now joining. Share the live as you come in. Share the live. Share the live. Share the live. Share the live. As you're now heading in, share the live. Tonight is a wonderful discussion. We are going to have a talk about the Constitution one more time. I know this was a very hot topic during the time of the decisions that are wanting to be made by the chairperson of the Ghana Elections Commission. We're going to have a more intense discussion on it, and we're going to break it up somewhat. We're going to break it up somewhat so we can get to understand. Yes. So, good night, good evening to you once again. Good night from Guyana to the Caribbean Isles, the West Indian Isles, the Pacific Isles, the British Virgin Isles, the US Virgin Isles, the Maldives, Mexico, the US, Canada, UK, EU, to China, Beijing, Hong Kong, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. Good night to those who are looking at us from the Australian continent, to the New Zealand Isles and the Tonga Isles. Good night to you, to those who are looking from India. And also to, when I mean India, it's the country India that borders Pakistan and all the rest of stands. Good night to you. And good night to those who are looking at this show from the African continent, as far as Cote d'Ivoire and the Ivory Coast and places like Mozambique, places like Angola, South Africa. Good night to you. Good evening and good night and good afternoon and good morning to those who are looking at this show from that particular part of the globe, to those who are looking at the show from the South American continent. From as far as Chile and Argentina and Venezuela and Brazil, in certain parts of Brazil too. They got a part that I got somebody who hooked me up from, as a matter of fact, hailed me up from the city of Recife and Brasilia, which is the capital. And we have lots of people who look at the Gavin Matthews show from Amazona, Brazil. Not Amazona, sorry, Roraima, Brazil. That's on of the border of Latem and the Bovista. That whole entire area they call Roraima, even to our parts of the of that border place that they call Latem, they call that entire area Roraima. Good evening and good night to you who are looking at this show from that particular part of Brazil. Good night to you who are looking at us at the show from Suriname and French and Dutch Guyana and the Netherlands. Good night to you, to those who are looking at us from Curacao and Trinidad. Good evening and good night. Welcome to you all from across the world. Tonight is an interesting topic, and why I say it so because I got a message from a very good friend of mine, and he normally sends me these what I call advices, political, legal advices, and also things that he would want to, keep up to date with me. And this is what he said. And I want to those who are looking to listen and understand what he has written me today. And this particular part of what he sent to me really stands out the most. And it talks about what I was talking about for a pretty long period of time. He said in his review that he posted to me, he said, let's stop trying to redefine the democratic apparatus or re-establish the intent of safeguards of a democracy and the mechanics thereof or of it. He goes on to say, the democratic procedures and theories could never have conceived to take the estate of consent. Out of everything that he said, this part stand out the most. And it didn't stop there. Let me make sure that my articles is back on so I can be able to pronounce more upon his understanding. Yes. He said, as I may go back, he said the democratic procedures and theory could never have conceived to take the estate of consent. And we can talk about what is the estate of consent, which comes from the people and intended to be exercised by the proportional representation of members of parliament, and rest it all in the hands of one human being, that is Khalid Singh, who is obviously pressured from all angles of GCOM's, who is obviously pressured from all angles of GCOM's chairwoman. Such an act serves to diminish and opens the doors to all kinds of speculations and possible political biases, not to mention that it serves to undermine public confidence. In the worst way, as we have all witnessed in the 2020, an individual chairwoman can never do a job of a 65 member parliament. Neither democracy by its very nature and concepts could never conceive such a pathway. Democracy is our objective, could never have conceived such, nor would it in theory have any such constitutional expectancy to have such as any of its goals, we must ponder what democracy is and what it's not. Simple understanding. To those who doesn't understand what I said just now, we're going to break it down into syllables now. In a democracy, no one person charters the way for a 65-member parliament, nor a voting population of 450,000 people. No one person charters that way. Our constitution never derived in itself to seek out Article 22 for one person to charter that way. Never did. So we're going to have that discussion now. Article 22 of the Representation of the People's Act, which is ROPA, cannot purport to find something which could never have been granted to the chairwoman of the Ghana Elections Commission, because such thought would have inherently opposed the conferring of authority, which is diametrically opposed to democratic process and procedures and objectives. I was reading this thing today and I kind of went back into our discussion way back then, nearly a year ago, and continuous, that no one person, Article 22 never found its way, will never redesign to give autonomy to one person to select and make a decision for a 65-member parliament. No one person. No one person. You know why I'm telling you that? The Constitution said so. The chairwoman of the Ghana Elections Commission was never given autonomy by the parliament to create, to construct such an act, because in order for Order 60 to be relevant, it has to bear itself from Parliament as an act. It has to bear itself from Parliament as a constitutional amendment in order for it to give void to the chairperson to be granted such autonomy. And because, Guyanese, because we can't read and we got to depend upon these lawyers to represent us, we're finding ourselves in difficult places, because for one to interpret the Constitution, for us to understand as a representation of the people, we have to listen to the ramblings that doesn't make sense. That is what happened. And because we only allow such a thing to happen by our lawyers, the legal body, to do as it should, we so depend upon that. We depend upon our leaders to represent us, but nobody can tell us what is right from wrong, because we don't understand, or we don't understand over the Constitution. It is created to make us comfortable. What is a democracy? A democracy does not derive from one single person act to say that is a democracy. If we had a particular one single person's act, well, then we wouldn't have a chancellor court where we have the chancellor, which is the most senior judge, the president of the court of appeal, then the two other senior judges. We wouldn't have that. We would just have one person to make a decision. So when the chief justice or the chief magistrates make a decision, we have the appeal courts by three judges to make a final decision. You know, I wonder when I read this part, when it says democracy as our objective, democracy as our objective, could never have conceived such, nor would it in theory. That means theory, what you read in the law books as the Constitution, have any such constitutional expectancy to have such as an any of its goals. We must ponder what a democracy is and what it is not. Because if we can't represent the people, what is a democracy? If you're passing Order 60 and you claim it derived from Article 22, and you're saying it's part of a proportional representatives, and the proportional representation only derives in Parliament. That is who the people that we're talking about that makes the law, that creates the amendment. So how can one person represent a proportional representation of 65 seats? The entire Parliament. She's not the Speaker of the National Assembly, nor does the Speaker does anything of such. You understand what I mean? So how does one person becomes the chief architect of the proportional representation in Parliament? Then the worst thing of it, out of such cometh Order 60, that makes it more damaging, because Order 60 in itself is unconstitutional. It has to be a part of the decision making of Parliament. The lawmakers. How does one person represents both the executive and the opposition, which makes up 65 seats? That represents the entire nation. When now that happens and we file an elections petition, that is not our duty to. Suddenly, like it's only Anil and the rest of them thieves got the brains. You know, this is what the lawlessness of 2020 into 2021 brought to this country. It says here, such an act serves to diminish and open the doors to all kinds of speculation and possible political bias. And we look around. That is what happened. That is why, for people like me who's against it, because it opens the door to speculation. How all the time we agreeing to 10 administrative districts and 10 returning officers, according to the Representation of the People's Act that Mr. Jack Dio wants to challenge, because he now is asking for a revision of ROPA because ROPA does not suit the contents of his ability to destroy our Constitution. That is a constitutional criminal. Because he wants to represent the same country, but he doesn't like the constitution of the country because it doesn't suit his ability to govern. He wants to add in the part where you can now be, or you can now attain the presidency by what you call an installation policy. So in case the people voted for a person that Jack Dio and the international community doesn't like, they can move them and install themselves because you're voting for the wrong person. Suddenly. And not to mention that it serves to undermine the public confidence. The Constitution gives me the right to tell you when I feel uncomfortable and I don't like you. The Constitution gives me the right to come on this particular podium or modium. You understand? To come here and to tell you that I don't like you and to tell you that you're a thief and a murderer. As long as I see fit. Because I'm uncomfortable about you. Your reign of terror is evident. I don't have to get a recorder. Just like how you could stand up and say the whole world is watching, the whole world saw. But for me, I'm waiting for the whole world to react. I'm going to react. Yes, I may be a single man. Yes, I may be a lone individual. But it has to start somewhere. It has to start somewhere. Now we got people who are misrepresenting us because of this charade of lawlessness. This is absolute lawlessness. We got one set of people who doesn't care about the Constitution, doesn't care about people. They don't have time about us. They just don't care, whether we like it or not. Then we got one person derailing the entire thing, Claudette Singh, because she's saying that Article 22 of ROPA gives her the right. No, it doesn't give her the right. What gives her the right is to follow the procedure. That's what gives her the right. Because it specifically said if you cannot come up with or an agreement of the declaration, the only thing sees fit by the chairwoman to do is call for a fresh elections. That's what it says. Call for a fresh elections. It didn't tell you that you must do what you want with the Constitution. It didn't tell you to do what you want with the Constitution. It's important for persons to understand the international elements, factors, and procedures of democracy, and well-established democratic practices and process. This is why we continue to highlight that not even the High Court of Justice, Roxanne George, can twist and bend or make new recharacterizations for a well-established democracy procedures. And that's what Roxanne George did. That's what she did. She created a recharacterization of an understanding of Article 22 and says to the public, don't read what the Constitution says. Don't bother with that. Do what I say the country, what I think the Constitution said. So in her thinking, she recharacterized that specific item in Article 22 and says it gives the chairperson a wide range of autonomy. Well, we'll be on to the next chairperson that go there. They might create Article 70 and 80. Their own characterization of the Constitution. Y'all see where I'm coming from? And the sheer criminals now lining up for the job. Sheer criminals we got lining up for the job. Gokul Budu is one. And they're talking, you could imagine, and they're talking about Mingo and Lowenfield. You know, and you know, Guyanese. Sometimes every night I finish here, I gotta drink a pressure tablet. I figure out me pressure is suddenly rise to the occasion. Because I can't understand or overstand where are we going. These things are happening right in front of our face. We're being challenged as a nation. We're being challenged as a nation. And we're not doing anything. We are being openly challenged as a nation to react. And we stay more put more than anything else. That is why it is always simple to understand that the estate of content must stand. What is the estate of content? The democratic norms of parliament, which 65 seats of lawmakers must make the decision of constitutional amendment, and not Claudette Singh, not Roxanne George. The powers does not derive to them. It cannot be but by my mind, I think the Constitution says this. Suddenly, by her mind, she looks up into the heavens, or she sees the heavens, because you got to look up, and suddenly thinks by her mind, which is the epiphany of lawlessness, suddenly nobody can challenge her mind. And when it is challenged, it lost to the appeal court. The appeal court suddenly had a flood out, and all the files had disappeared. Seeking to make democracy what it was not intended to do. That was a miscarriage on the part of the court, either intentionally, and I don't think it's unintentionally. Everything is intentionally by the court. Therefore, we must also call Justice Roxanne George on it. Nor must we exclude Granger and Jack Dio collectively. Because at the end of the day, I know that they were advised by their constitutional lawyers. This is the wrong pathway to go. So there was nothing unintentionally. Even to the judge in the High Court got the legal officers working with them to tell them upon the decisions to make. So you can't run wrong no can't run wrong me funny. You know, I love this part of the conversation. We must understand that not only were many other laws not complied with, the distinction must be made that first and foremost, democracy as a system of governance is the test which all have to comply with. It is the instrument of measuring upon which the state apparatus of Guyana and all the agencies shall use as their yardstick checks and balances. GECOM as an agency must also conform and comply to this. Claudette Singh cannot choose to conveniently mix or cherry pick what suits her unilaterally, because she is happen finding herself between a precarious rock and a hard place. Hence, she aborts or aborted democracy and its checks and balances for a to substitute it with her individualism in the shadows and gray areas of the law. To that, we must emphatically and to that we must denounce. We must denounce here unilateral actions because her actions are wrong. You can't choose to make certain decisions when it suits you, because at the end of the day, Guyana or Guyanese doesn't have a representation because everybody is the same. So you put us in one barrel. You look at us in one action and you turn around to say, well, all of we is the same because we're encouraging the same slackness. Very good, Miss Allen. Therefore, she should be jailed because she has made a constitutional. As a matter of fact, the decisions that she's made was unconstitutional, which is a crime. Because I knew very well that she acted on behalf of herself. And she also implemented as a legal figure because she was in this legal system for so many years. She knows the law. She's not exempted from the law. And as long as you tell yourself unilaterally that you are pronouncing your word wrong. But as long as you tell yourself that you have complete autonomy over the 65 member seats of parliament, something is definitely wrong. And what the law provides is for you to challenge these areas that she once occupied to make Order 60. Challenge her in these same gray areas that she picked up. Don't challenge them in a constitutional amendment act. That doesn't make sense. These are the areas that she made complete disregard for the laws, the supreme laws of this country, that you have to challenge her in. We must understand in a democratic state, the laws must follow the leading principle or doctrine, which happens to be democracy, and the Constitution also follows the democracy doctrine. Democracy leads and the laws follow and comply to a democratic system. Therefore, as first step in the case management proceeding in the courtroom is both logical and rational, that judges must be made to first understand democracy is the horse that leads the chart, which are the laws follows to govern the citizens. This is why we all say we live and belong to a democratic country or a communist country, whichever one we want to choose. Democracy is the doctrine, and the system is primarily the laws are only secondary. Democracy is the doctrine, and the system is primarily. The laws are only secondary. Democracy must follow. Those are the procedures of the law. In any democratic state, you think, all of y'all, whether you belong to the PPP or the APNU AFC that you want to claim yourselves, do you think the actions of coaliting is democratic? Do you think it proportionally represents you as a people? Do you think it took away your rights and the will for you to vote and the will for the person for you to represent you proportionally by a majority? It didn't happen. She took that away. She told the world that Guyana only elects a president based upon certified ballots and not valid votes. That's what she told the world. And the world sees fit that they like that. That means the next election is the PNC or APNU in the opposition. We could call for the same order 60 and have a recount. And we must put at least 70,000 ballots that we could certify so we could win the election. You think that's a good part for me to do? That's a good road for you to run down. That's a very nice option. The next election, which might be this year and or next year, we got at least 70,000 votes to put into a box. We ain't got no references whatsoever, no paper or documentation to identify it. And we call a recount, and we have them certify the ballots, not verify the votes to make it valid votes. Just certify it. And we win the election. We become an installed regime. Take it away from the will of the people to verify the votes, to make it valid votes. That's the best thing to do. Y'all think so? I believe that's the most best option. Because since we like move, we can accept anything. Of course, to the person who's talking here in the comment, they raise the ants nest. So let's take over the place. And when we can't get it, we got at least what's her name? The Vice President of the United States of America come and said, well, Mr. President, it is time you hand over the reign to the APNU AFC for they have won the election. Yes. Call Kamala Harris, give her a press statement and give her a piece of paper to address a fraud. Say, look, presidents, hand the elections and the presidency over to the APNUFC because Order 70 give us the way, because we can't go back to Order 60. We got to make a higher order after every election. Let's go on. The laws are put in place to encourage and facilitate a democracy and a democratic way of living and governance. Therefore, judges must see that all laws in the court's hearing must follow their governing doctrine and compliance with democracy in the case of Guyana. If we were a China or Russia, the opposite would be true. All laws have to follow a doctrine. In this case, that doctrine or principle is a democracy, and the intent of a democratic arms, public consent, transparency must be involved at every phase of the purpose. This is how we would eventually arrive at a point of credibility and confidence. What Claudette did undermined all these things. That's why we are in the political crisis to a large degree. As chairwoman, she had opportunity to choose correct conduct. She chose not to. Notwithstanding, that entire scheme to set up or to set away from original count is where it all started. Because you know why? Before the returning officer hands in his tabulation and declaration of that returning district, any recount is possible then. But the Constitution says after he has declared his district, there's no contentions of a recount. You only have to do that via way of an election petition. So what they did, they put it in reverse. They didn't wait for a new declaration or swearing of a president to have an elections petition. They have an elections petition before. So that's how they triggered a recount, by misinterpreting Article 22 of the Representation of the People's Act. That's what they did. Additionally, when we examine Claudette Singh's official behavior and conduct, we must hold Claudette Singh not only to the letter of law, but she, Claudette Singh, must equally be assessed by the courts and others in public citizenry to see how her procedures are not in conformation to the governing doctrine of democracy. So she had methods, and her methods were Order 60 to trigger a recount. So we must note this was a simple case of cause and effect. Democracy is the cause, and the procedures, which is laws, are the effects. They are inseparable, like fire and heat, water or wetness. Claudette Singh's action cannot conveniently or arbitrarily choose to randomly act in a unilateral or dictatorial way. Her actions must be democratic at all times on behalf of the time as she demonstrated. All registered voters in Guyana have signed up and registered as voters under the democratic law of the Representation of the People's Act. Voters' registration laws with settled expectations. The entire voting country of Guyana is expecting democratic actions by the chairwoman, not switches or swings over a unilateral dictatorial actions. These are some of the sleight of hand areas where Justice Roxanne George made her errors and failed to see in her courtroom. Well, there ain't no error. She failed to see nothing in she courtroom. She don't have it in her own oblivion that she's going to take away the rights of all Guyanese. She had it in her oblivion to take away the rights of all Guyanese by doing what? Stating that Elections Petition 99 doesn't make sense. She's not judging on it, but she kicked it out to the door. And when Election Petition 88 came up, she told them that it has no evidence. The evidence is Elections Petition 99. So she kicked 99 through the door and she kicked 88 through the door. Contentionally. And knowing that the couple people that we got representing 88 and 99's petition ain't got no sense. So she hurried them up through the door. Look, y'all go through the door too. All y'all. Because y'all don't know how to file an elections petition. This is also where the APNU AFC legal team and people failed to step in and contend. The entire approach of the case was lost at this crucial point. Enough said for now. And you know why it was lost? Public confidence. So you find now they are running the elections petition based upon public confidence because they know that the public confidence is going to give up time like now. We ain't got time in elections petition because we can say, oh God, they're going to run it for the next 5 years till when they're near for call elections again and the elections petition was never heard. It's the same thing, public confidence. They're depending upon public confidence. And in the meantime, they depend upon public confidence. They are murdering the public, killing them out, which is a violation of human rights in this country. So we find it in a very hard place. We find ourselves in a very hard place where those laws are concerned. Because in his conversation, he said, therefore, we contend that Claudette Singh as an individual Lone Ranger could never satisfy the most important element and cornerstone of democracy. As the theory of doctrine requires, there is nothing democratic about individual or unilateral decisions where an entire country would then have to live with. It meant, close, it says, not to mention the fact that all democratic agreements of Roper were being disenfranchised. That in itself is a second separate contention on a breach of Roper agreements between each each voting person during the voters' registration. All of this, these people sit down and understand. So there was no error, neither by the elections petition, neither by the or the 60 of the chairperson of the Ghana Elections Commission. There was no error. Everybody knew what they were doing. Everybody knew it depends upon the public confidence, and they gambled on it. Because as long as you're gambling on the public confidence, you're winning because you can get paid. Because if me, elected leader, ain't doing nothing but sit down and drink soup, well, I can't do nothing. Because if I go there, I can get myself killed. And nobody moving. And they know Guyanese doesn't understand the power that they have. Because the Constitution is based upon the will of the people. That is the strength of the Constitution. So they took that away. This, which highlights the fact wherein that the APNU AFC legal approach in the court to challenge against GCOM's chairwoman misuse of Article 22 of the of ROPA, the Representation of the People's Act, to grant her autonomy to create Order 60 was fundamentally wrong, because in a state and Guyana's constitution, which purports to ensure governance and government by a way of consent, which is the will of the people, to this person who's asking where the article is, just go to Google and type in Guyana's constitution, and it will take you there. Just keep typing in. When you get into there, you go into search bar again, you press Representation of the People's Act, Article 22. All them things will come up. You ain't got to pay for it. So, it requires that consent must flow from proportional representation, which is the people again. The consent of democracy does not flow from the chairperson of the Ghana Elections Commission. It flows from the proportional representation. And how does people who represent the proportional representation meet there? Via way of election, which is the will of the people. We didn't elect Planet Singh. We elect a parliament which has gone there by a way of proportional representation, which represents the law. They are the only person to take, abstract, or dilute, or increase upon the laws of the Constitution. They are the only persons since when one woman and Parliament was dissolved. And if you wanted such a thing to happen, we can react Parliament by an emergency. The law says so. We can have an emergency Parliament to make an amendment so we can have Order 60, which is representation of Article 22 of the Representation of the People's Act. We could have done that. And if that was done, we didn't have a problem. We would have to abuse who we elect. We'd have to tear off their head. So, it says here, because in the state and Guyana's constitution, which purports to ensure Guyanese and governance and the government by a way of consent, requires that consent must flow from the proportional representation by a way of voters through our elected representatives in Parliament. A collective and proportional representation to seek and satisfy a democratic consent. Roxanne George decides that Planet Singh alternatively found that authority consent from Article 22. I, I need I need for people who are here looking at this show, you understand, to respectfully go to this site. All you gotta do is look it up. It can't alter. It is the constitution. They can't go there and alter it. Right now they got big constitutional fight in parliament about the Public Accounts Committee to be activated because the chairperson is an opposition member of parliament, which the government has to answer for, that can take to court for the handling of the public's funds. Because the government doesn't want the PAC, the Public Accounts Committee chairperson, to activate or to summons the Auditor General's office to audit them pertaining to the funds that they're spending so lavishly. They don't want that. They don't want proper accountability. They don't want a democracy. We don't live in a democracy. We live in an autocracy. Therefore, we contend that Prarit Singh is an individual lone ranger and could never satisfy that most important element and cornerstone of democracy and theory, as the theory and doctrine requires. She cannot. Even to the theoretical part of it, she cannot satisfy because she cannot explain. In the High Court's ruling, when Elections Petition 88 was kicked through the door, yet still the High Court Acting Chief Justice Roxanne George Wiltshire could not evidently find the sections in Article 22 of the Representation of the People's Act to redefine Prarit Singh's position. But she said in her pronouncement that by her mind, she thinks this is the lawlessness we got to behave with now. Because nobody can challenge the system. Guyanese doesn't have money. We got beg people from international community to challenge the persons that sits in these constitutional bodies of their actions. Because we don't have money to order a case or to graft a case. We don't have the lawyers to bring about the constitutional referendums and look at the loopholes that they're trying to create to break the backs of the will of the people. It's not about the pronouncement of words and the graphical theories of words that are given in tonight's show. It's not about the hypothetical behavior of these elements that we have that represent a democratic society. It's about the mistrust of the public's confidence in these criminals that we have, that states to hold or states that they are holders of the Constitution. I want to know where are the bearers of democracy that were guarding those tanks, those containers of ballot boxes that had the 47. When the 47 ballot box turned up, suddenly the bearers of democracy are not around. You can't see them. Oh, they were. Now I remember. Bishop One Edge. I shouldn't even call this man bishop. He's no bishop. This man ain't even a sinner. He gone past sinning stage. He's not a man of God. I don't even know who God is. One Edgil. He was one of them. We got a lot of criminals in church. Plenty. But the doctrine and theory of an understanding of a people must be upheld in a court of law, because that is a democracy. The will of the people must be exalted and must be explained in its full version. Tonight was a very special night for me. I enjoyed bringing this topic up because I figured out that we still needs to be re-educated constantly. We must try to erase the level of misinformation that is out there, because the People's Progressive Terrorist Party are no holders of democracy. They do not exercise democracy. In their tenure of reign, it's about terror, murder, racism, mayhem. It is evident. It is not about, oh gosh, what we are going to do. It's about, yes, we are going to revolt. But I must appreciate the time that you took out to tune in, that we can have this discussion. I very much appreciate that, for this hour that has passed, that I have garnered your attention to give an ear to this conversation myself and others would have had over a period of time, to understand the mindset and the understanding of a people. I want to thank you for calling the GMS Live Voice of Democracy. We got a 5 minutes, so you can go ahead.
Thank you, Gavin. What a wonderful job you're doing. You're putting out your heart and your soul for Guyana.
Mm-hmm.
To show the strength of your patriotism. And I wish the people who are running for office on both sides got the amount of wisdom, the strength that you have. You know, I was listening to the article that you were reading just now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's logical. It is sensible. But though there is no law in Guyana presently, there is none. What you read there, it's constitutional, it's there, whatever. What transpired on March 2nd was total treason. We can't beat around the bush. You cannot. The chief elections officer, Ms. Singh, she committed treason. She started it. Followers or the judges, the system, the state apparatus, who people remove legal bodies or legal standing people, put them, send them on vacation, and put inexperienced to preside over a case, a very important case, where the Democratic elected party, the party that people chose to lead them, turn to the courts for clarity. If Guyanese let this pass, this started from the time that Janet Jagan threw that petition over her shoulder, and nobody had the gall or the decency, respect for the Guyana Constitution and Guyana law to take her to court for it. It started there.
And they never went to court for it.
Then we had this.
They went till the CARICOM to sign a Hodgson Accord. Such lawlessness. These people want to put him in a barrel and just roll him into the ocean.
It's graceful. It is graceful. We listen. The politicians now who running for office should be ashamed of themselves. They know to themselves what took place. Those who are running presently for the leader of the APNU or PNC or whoever, do they have the God? Do they have the guts, the stamina, the patriotic spine to take those criminals, those people who committed treason on the Guyanese people? Do they have the gall to pass them through the court? No, they don't. And this will always happen. There's no turning back on this. If people do not go to court, if they do not pay for that act that took place, people who storm the convention center, threaten police on camera, and they do not answer for it, this is not going to get better. But yet we can prosecute poor people for. I'm not advocating for criminals, but this is the level of lawlessness. The law shouldn't only apply to the poor. The law should apply to the people who knows better, and they should feel it the most because they are well learned.
Yep.
Gavin, you better your article or the article that you were reading from is very educational. But sometimes I think the people who take the time to write these things, it's like if they don't know, we know what they're trying to say. We know that. But what is the action? What are the consequences for that?
That's the question. One begs to answer.
What is the consequence? We don't want it. We know that. We know what they did. We know what the chief did. We know whoever did what they did. What are the consequences? Don't write these long articles. The small minds don't want that. They want comfort. They want peace. They don't want discrimination. You sat there, you give up power. Your people are being marginalized. You do nothing, but you have the time to fight and quarrel about who's going to be leader. To do what? To sit there and take more blows?
Well,
absolutely not.
Well, you know,
we should reject this.
Well, you know, we're a little out of time. I wanna.
Thank you so much. You're doing a wonderful job.
Yeah.
I always tell you, don't let no one tell you or try to down your spirit.
I think they're trying that over time.
Don't bother.
Yeah.
You have a wonderful evening.
You
and
too.
keep on your good works.
Yes, you too.
Right?
Yes, stay safe and be careful.
You too. Thank you.
Uh,
Bye.
so this brings to an end of this the GMS Live Voice of Democracy until tomorrow night. We want to thank you very much for joining in tonight. For those who have shared their views in the commentary section, and we wish for you to keep on doing so from time to time. We also wish to ask you do not forget to go on the page and vote on the referendum, and let's have this vote kicking to activate the office of the Chancellor of the Judiciary to represent the will of the people. There is also the GoFundMe that we're asking that you be able to contribute to. I don't think I have it. Hold on. I don't think I have it. Do I? Do I? Yes. Yes. I have it up there. There's a GoFundMe, and I would like for you to go on it and very much ask you to contribute so we can have this portion of legal understandings and representation be represented by the people for the people. We want to thank you very much for joining with us tonight. Remember to stay safe, be careful, sanitize yourself, wear masks. Don't forget the little ones who want to take into public places. This is Dr. Matthews saying cheerios and good night for now.